Hi, and welcome back to the Kindergarten through 8th grade General Music PLC here on the Georgia Department of Education community. This is Topic 2, Classroom Management, and it's Segment 3, Addressing Individual Student Behaviors. In this segment, we'll talk about why relationships matter when addressing individual student behaviors. We'll talk about the different functions of behavior, how you can communicate with classroom teachers to assist and support each other with behavior, how you can communicate with parents to support and assist with behavior, and additional Georgia Department of Education resources that address individual student behavior. So let's talk about why relationships matter. You can't teach someone something new when they're in a state of distress. So you need to establish that positive relationship with them first before you can address their behaviors. And you need to have that relationship to fall back on afterward so you can discuss how to fix those behaviors in the future. As I've discussed in segment 2, I try to focus a lot on the positive aspect. And when I do have to address those problem behaviors, I have a very clear pattern of steps that I take so that I, as the adult, can remain calm in that situation. And I know that I can go from step 1 to step 2. And if that doesn't work, then I can go to step 3. And so that helps me as the adult in the room kind of stay calm, because it's easy to get yourself kind of caught up in the behaviors. And we have to keep ourselves from becoming agitated to help maintain that positive relationship. So again, I have these music rewards and music consequences of posters in my room, and I tell them the different kinds of things they can get for those positive behaviors. And like I said in segment 2, I try as much as possible for the students who do struggle with this to highlight the positive. Whenever they're doing something good, I take a moment to acknowledge it. Humans exist on a bell curve in almost every situation, and this includes behavior too. So you've got, in the middle of the bell curve, you've got most of your students who may need a reminder or two from time to time, but in general will be pretty well behaved and compliant, especially if you remind them of the expectations. On one end of the bell curve, you'll have those exemplar students who you can always count on, who will not get caught up in whatever behavior issue is overcoming the whole class. And on the other end, you'll have students who need a little bit of extra support with behavior. And as professionals, knowing that, that's helpful to us to know that this will happen. This happens in every classroom across the country. So we need to have processes in place to help the students when that does happen. So on the consequences side, you can see for an individual, the first step is just a warning. In fact, I don't even like to call it a warning. I just like to call it a reminder. Hey, I'm noticing you're a little bit too excited. Can we try to calm down and focus? Second time, logical consequence. My example is always with the instruments in music class. Maybe we're playing too loud, or we're playing when it's not our turn to play. Hey, I've already reminded you that this is not how we play our instruments or when we play our instruments. So let's go sit down for a couple minutes to regather our thoughts, and then we can come back to the instrument. Again, always with a tone of calm. And then if that problem does persist, then that's when you're going to communicate with your parents. And I have a note home, but different teachers prefer to handle this in different ways. Some prefer to email, some prefer to have a phone call. My special areas department at my school has a unified note that we all share, and we just circle our area. So I will circle music, and it's got my email address in case they have questions. But that's how we address individual student behaviors in terms of the steps it takes to address them. Not stated here is even after the note home, if those problems become even more escalated, or in emergency situations when I have students who are maybe trying to run out of the classroom, or maybe trying to hurt themselves or others, or trying to damage equipment, then I will utilize a fourth step, which is calling the front office for assistance. But I try to handle as much as I can within my own classroom as I can, because again, that fosters that relationship between me and the student, that we can build a mutual understanding and a mutual trust with each other. So let's talk about what behaviors are. This is a model called the ABC model. It's the antecedent, the behavior, and the consequence. So when you're seeing these behaviors, think about what may have happened before you saw them that caused the behavior itself, and then what happened after the behavior was demonstrated. A lot of times I'll have students coming into my room frustrated about something that happened before they even got to me, but that counts. That's an antecedent. They're already agitated and they're already kind of on edge before they even enter my room, but then the behaviors themselves manifest when they get to my room. Maybe I don't know what exactly happened, but I can understand that something happened to cause that. Oftentimes it's something someone else said to another kid. Sometimes it's something that we maybe unintentionally said or did not do in our classroom, but there's always something that triggers a behavior. And then the consequence is what happened after the behavior was demonstrated. And so that is kind of in your hands, and a natural consequence would be something that is related to the behavior. So I try not to use timeouts in my class as a go-to consequence. I try to use something directly related to that specific behavior. So my example again was the instruments. If they're playing out of turn or playing inappropriately, then they will take a step away from the instruments, but I'll give them something else to do. I do have a take a break center in my class, and so if someone needs to just kind of self-regulate and calm themselves down, they can do that, but I never ask them or require them to do that. I will suggest it, but I never require it because it's not a punishment. Consequences are different than punishments. We're thinking of something that can help resolve the behavior and help teach how to correct that behavior in the future. There are four main functions of behavior, and this can help explain behavior as well. They may not be responsible for the behavior itself, but they are the reasons that a behavior might be happening. So one example is escape, and the examples in the far right corner here are, as you can see, neutral or positive behaviors and negative behaviors. So for example, you might be tantruming because you don't want to do a certain project. I see this a lot with students who get frustrated with music, and if they find something too hard, they'll exhibit some sort of behavior to try to get out of doing that assignment. Another mutual or neutral example would be taking a different route to avoid traffic. So it's not necessarily a negative behavior, but it is still trying to escape something. Another function is attention. So the neutral or positive example that they give is raising your hand and waiting to be called on, where the negative is screaming so that someone comes over. So a lot of the times the behaviors are just attention-seeking behaviors, which again is why I try to foster that relationship and give them as much positive attention as possible, because a lot of these students want attention one way or the other, and for them they've found that getting attention through negative behaviors is the quickest and easiest way. So if you can avoid that and nip that in the bud by giving them positive attention, that may help address that function of behavior. Another thing is tangible. They want something. So if there is a movement prop that they want and someone else got it, maybe they call them a name, or maybe they physically hurt them to get that prop. That is because that behavior is because they want something tangible. Another thing is a positive consequence, completing homework for iPad time. That's a positive consequence. So it's still an extrinsic, tangible reward, and that's why they're exhibiting that behavior. And finally, sensory. We do have some kiddos who just have behaviors to help them and with their sensory behaviors. So scratching an itchy mosquito bite, fanning your face on a hot day. These can be examples of just things the kids need to do to kind of self-regulate. And sometimes those behaviors can be disruptive to others, but we have to understand where they're coming from. So when these behaviors inevitably do come up, and if you follow that behavior cycle of a warning, a reminder, and then a consequence, and then you come to the point where you do need to send a note home, let's talk about what that might look like. So when we communicate with parents, I always like to partner with them because nobody knows that child better than their parent. So when I communicate with them, usually it will just kind of neutrally explain the behavior that occurred, and then I will ask them to partner with me in helping to ensure future success. And if they have any strategies that I could use that they know of that might help their student, that kind of gets the parents on your side. And then again, relationships matter. And if it's a student who really does need a lot of support, you're going to want to build that relationship with that parent and make that a two-way street where you are supporting each other. You'll also want to communicate with classroom teachers and other building professionals. I feel like a lot of time, especially if we're the only music teacher in the building, we feel like we're taking on this burden all by ourselves, and we have to have the solution without seeking out any support. And that's just not true. One of my biggest pieces of advice I always give if there is a class that has more than one kind of really challenging behavior students is to go and spend 5 minutes in that child's homeroom or in that class's homeroom and see how the homeroom teacher approaches it and see what kind of culture is in that classroom. Of course, if you have 30 different classes in a week, you can't adjust your own classroom management style to 30 different homeroom teacher styles. But if you know that there's something that they're doing that's working, you can try that in your classroom. I also find that a lot of the times, maybe the student's on a behavior chart throughout the day and is earning points during reading or during math, and they sometimes will just simply forget to put music and art and PE on that behavior chart. So that could be as simple as a conversation. Do they have a behavior chart? Is specials on there? A lot of the times specials might be on there and we don't even know it. They're just taking information that we give them at the end of class and putting it on the chart. If we can help take ownership of that part of the chart, then that can help the students try to be a little bit more motivated to try to address those behaviors during class. And then there's also other building professionals. Every building has a counselor, and many buildings have social workers, and a lot of the times these professionals also have a history of the student's behavior. So feel free to reach out to them as well. These are all great resources that I feel like a lot of music teachers don't realize are available to them. And again, they have to feel like the burden is all on them, and they should not feel that way. If you go to the Georgia Department of Education website for fine arts, you can scroll down to where it says Professional Development for Arts Teachers. The first art listed is music. There are 2 webinars here that I want to bring your attention to. First is Behavior Basics, De-escalation Strategies for the Music Educator. So I talked a lot about what may be causing behaviors, but this goes a lot into details about how to address those beyond just your 3-step discipline cycle of warning, consequence, note home. The other one I want to bring your attention to is Bravo Behavior, which talks a lot more about positive behavior reinforcement. Remember, to access these webinars, you need to click the link to the webinar registration, fill out your contact information, and one of the members of the Georgia Department of Education Fine Arts staff will send you information about how to access those webinars. This has been the end of Topic 2, Classroom Management, Segment 3, Addressing Individual Student Behaviors.